Hello and welcome. You're watching The Platform. My name is Sam Omashe. The much anticipated governorship election in Ekiti State is now in the past. There is a winner and a loser. On the national political scene, there is a scare caused by the coalition of united political parties to snatch majority votes against President Muhammadu Buhari in the 2019 general election. Also, insecurity in the country is getting worse, and the government is yet to stop the killers in their track. We will start the program, however, by giving you the weekly dose from my column In Touch, published in the Nation newspaper, and it is titled A Native Returns.
So it's all over. Kayode Fayemi, the Danish fellow with a guttural voice, will now return to the mound he vacated 4 years ago. Ayo Fayose, the governor at theatre, now retreats either to the shadow of oblivion or ignominy. And it was a long way coming, like the words of T.S. Eliot in his poem, The Journey of Maggie, a hard journey. He heard of it. Fayemi crouched, sulked, fought over that 2014 poll. He said he was robbed. Some believed, many doubted. The court acclaimed the winner. The erudite former governor seemed to have collapsed into the sort of ennui. But still hovering over that dreary dawn were many questions. The electronic evidence of Jonathan's soldiers in gladiatorial electronic haste, his political minions in a million lying tales, the birth of stomach infrastructure. Fayose was a feathery impresario and a sort of mythical tale of a returnee to power. Fayemi consoled himself with a ministerial toga, but what a consolation. He still felt an ache. Anytime I saw him, I saw the ache in a contrived display of self-confidence and even defiance. The sense of someone deprived. I remember he explained to me over the phone a few days after INEC released the results. While Fayose still huffed and puffed, he said he had to concede because he did not want any killing fields. The ache, I think, is still not over. He carries it still until he is done. A big meal was at the table, but he still worked himself over the one he did not finish. Now he has the chance again at the table. So while Fayose peacocked and derided him, he answered back, but his voice was somewhat muted. The narrative of stomach infrastructure rose over any rhetoric of his achievements. On this show, just before the APC primaries, which he gulped handily, I wanted him to go back to his time as governor. The charge of aloofness, of focusing on elite style over what many saw as Fayose's common touch. He was not at all repentant. He had learned his lessons, but he would not sway from his task of obviating poverty. He is not the type to stop by a market and help women fry gari, or buy bole at the roadside, or utter imprecations at an old ailing president. He could not do that even if it meant losing an election. But the ache egged him on for over 4 years, working the grassroots methodically and in silence, a stealth agenda to clobber the great foe of his political life. The same Fayemi who would stay away had been jolted by the necessity of victory into the humility of grassroots work. Was the earlier defeat an asset for his soul and political trajectory? But he insists he never lost, and that question remains up till now. How do we agree that he lost all 16 local government areas, but Fayose lost all but 4? Yet the difference in numbers were about 20,000. What is clear is that what Fayemi had was a victory, not a mandate. That is critical. A mandate is an overwhelming victory. It may not be a landslide, but the difference must be emphatic. So a more of the Falski heartbeat should remain with Fayemi as he remounts the throne. Few people have opportunities for redemption, but shall we say that the great numbers that Fayemi's opponent Olushola Eleka had was a vote for stomach infrastructure? That means Fayemi must be a median between his lofty philosophy of governance and the quiet rumblings from society's ether. Some eyewitnesses' accounts of those who thought Eleka prematurely won chanted in Yoruba, "Ojú ti owó, ojú ti agbára." Translation means, shame on money, shame on power. Yet we cannot blind our eyes to a common story from reporters. Both sides turned election into a sort of bazaar. Money sprayed on voters. Some are saying that the people voted for the highest bidder. In Ondo, they called it Dibo Kosobe, vote and cook a soup. In Ekiti, the refrain was see and buy. If it was a battle for the highest bidder, there was no innocent party. The guilty one was our brand of democracy. In this age, democracy is still a bourgeois ideology. It lacks the innocence of its beginnings in Athens, a thing lamented by philosopher Hannah Arendt in her classic The Human Condition. Political scientists say money is the mother's milk of politics. So does it mean that Fayemi won because he outspent Fayose? Lincoln, perhaps America's best, often said that his best triumph as president was the Emancipation Proclamation, but he could not get it through Congress without bribing. There was, in spite of Lincoln's great morality, a Machiavellian impulse. We ought to learn from their beginning, not copy or console ourselves that filth is permitted with the lucre at this stage of our democracy. If that is the way of politics now, it means the new rigging is not to bully the ballot, but sully the mind. To rig, first rig the voter's mind. That is the definition of rigging at source. No bloodletting, no roughnecks bearing guns. So it is possible for Fayemi to ignite the common touch now. The election shows the majority wants it the Fayemi way, perhaps with the proviso that he is less lofty, his voice less granite, his eyes in softer hue. Now Fayemi has a chance to return. It will begin like Jesus returned to Jerusalem in pomp. But in Shakespeare's word, all is well that ends well. In 4 years, that is, will the return of the native look like Thomas Hardy's novel of that title where the novelist is not sure whether the native's return ends in a romance or estrangement? Dr. John Kayode Fayemi has the opportunity to write that testament.
In the news mentioned, public affairs analyst Achike Chude, always fertile with ideas, has joined me to put in perspective the stories in this section. We're starting, Achike, welcome to the show.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Yeah. We're starting with this coalition of united political parties. What do you see to it?
Well, if I want to be poetic, I would say no, no heaven or earth have slept. Since the very first time, I think it was Wahab Dosumu.
Yes.
I think he was the very first member of the National Assembly to cross carpet.
Yes.
And so, I mean, since then we have been seeing such things happen between, one political party and the other and the rest. And once you're not happy with this group, you quickly move to the other one. If you're not happy, you move, and so on. There is no sanction. There is no public opprobrium, against you. It is expected. That is the nature of the politics that we play. Politics bereft of ideology, bereft of any kind of, philosophical compass. And so you have a situation where political parties, members of political parties, the APC, who feel that they have not exactly been treated well or have one or two grudges, against the party, feel that they can best satisfy their political aspiration by jumping ship and all of
forming
that.
A coalition.
And forming a coalition. But then again, it's also, as they say, what comes around, what goes around comes around. The APC was also a major beneficiary of this kind of a political movement and all of that. So I'm sure even those within the APC who are still in the APC are not exactly, surprised about what is going on. It's in the nature and character of the Nigerian politicians. Yes, yes.
Now, do you think they are formidable?
Again, you know, they have to be tested in the battlefield. That is one. But clearly, you know, when some of them leave, you cannot exactly say that they are bereft of followership. You may not be formidable, the kind of followership that, you know, maybe we move with them. But the reality is that when you have a conglomeration, a gathering of a lot of these people, you could have, you know, more people join them in the process. But it's not exactly as easy as that, because the danger, again, they are taking a risk, a political risk. I'm sure they've done their calculations. Once they come out and they, you know, form any other political party and so on, they have to give it their all, because they don't want to remain out of mainstream, you know, politics in terms of the government in power for too long. There's like fish out of water. Most of the politicians you have today are not doing anything. They are not contributing, you know, anything to the national economy. They do not have factories. They do not have industries. They do not have, you know, they only survive on the basis of the politics that they play in this country. The politics of accommodation and patronage. So, but I think the APC will be doing themselves a lot of the service and will be doing a lot of miscalculation if they just feel and they say good riddance to bad rubbish. They could pay a price. And it's not just that we have seen the end of the movements. You're still going to have more movements.
If they bring out a person, they want somebody from the north. Buhari still holds that place.
Yeah, but again, there's something we also have to factor. If you bring out somebody, for instance, maybe a more credible or fairly credible governorship, candidate who is a governor, for instance, there is the possibility that in a state, because he's been a governor for a few years, if he's done one or two good things and so on, it could sway people from his state. And then, again, some of the embattled states in terms of security, that like we're having, that Benue, like.
But then you are talking about Benue, yes. like Benue, Adamawa.
We've had issues in Nasarawa State.
Nasarawa, but those were still just portions of it. Except Benue, except Benue, Taraba. Even Taraba is still split because there's still strong. There's still strong support, even in those states, for the president.
That is not. You know, exactly, that's not out of the way. That is very true. It's clear.
So what you need is somebody who can really shake Buhari in his own strong toughs.
Yeah.
Let's just go into Ekiti now. The election that took place, Fayemi won. In my column, I said it is a victory but not a mandate, because, you know, the gap was just about 20,000 something votes. And that by no means is an emphatic victory as such, but it's a victory all the same. He wins in about 16 out of, 12 out of 16 local government areas, and so on. So people are saying, well, this is a very interesting election. It is a man of stomach infrastructure who won for stomach infrastructure. But the election was about stomach infrastructure, and it went to the man who was not a proponent of stomach infrastructure.
But perhaps
how did that happen?
But perhaps who also satisfied the ingredients of a stomach infrastructure
that is the point. More than the original
propagator of stomach infrastructure,
because he had more resources to do so.
He had more resources to do so.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I think it was. But then the question you ask yourself is, what is the purpose? Because it gives us an opportunity to do some introspection and to, you know, really interrogate our minds and the narrative that is now beginning to be normalized in this country with regards to election. And what is the purpose of governance? What is the purpose of election? Again, how do you determine that an election is free, fair, credible? Yeah, you know, I know. There was one funny thing I saw on, I think, on social media, on a WhatsApp platform. He said, look, was talking about the money that was used in Ekiti State, and they were saying, well, it's 4,000 naira, maybe per vote, and so remember that you should guide that money well, because it's 1,000 naira per year.
Yes,
because it's a 4-year thing.
I see that. So
it's a 4-year thing.
Not two consequences of this. One, it shows that since the center has more money than the states, unless you are meeting a state that has formidable money, the center is going to yield.
Overwhelm the state. No, there are not two ways about that. Yes, you see, no, there are no two ways about it. That is very clear. Unfortunately, we are going to be worse off for it. Because, and the reality is that the situation is becoming normalized. Just like we said, it happened in Anambra, it happened in Ondo, it happened in Edo and the rest. But not to this magnitude. Now, people are beginning to get used to the fact that perhaps this could be a safer way to conduct elections. Nobody is going to be killed. You're not going to snatch boxes. You're not going to do this and all of that.
You're not going to pay for talks. You're not going to pay for arms. Because you're already armed. You're just rigging at source. You rig the mind by rigging the pocket.
And do you know one thing? In the wake of that election, I did an article and I titled, I think what was the title? Give way religion and ethnicity. Poverty is the new weapon. And so you find out that, and that goes to the heart of, I think, was it the man who propagated the survival of the fittest, Darwin, Charles Darwin, the basic law of nature is survivor. You survive first. You survive first. So you survive first before religious expressions. Exactly.
I have to eat first before I even know whether you win election or celebrate.
That is it. So money now or poverty has become a major weapon. We have always said, look, that the political class, that has always been their game. But right now, it can be institutionalized even more.
Whatever it is, it shows that the politics of this country is evolving into a new phase. We don't know whether
it's not a beautiful phase
at all. What Fayomi can do is that he can convert this and he can get a mandate by translating what this success is, or this Machiavellian moment into the elevation of the people. That would be his triumph.
It depends on him. If he decides not to do that, they will also enter the book of infamy once more. So it's left for him.
It's left for him.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Chike.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure having you here. Thank you. The big talk is with the co-convener of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, a fiercely passionate believer in the public good of the nation, Oby Ezekwesili. It was a fest of ideas and conversation with Nigeria's first lady of ideas and conscience. Well, let's start from the very recent. You embarked on a one-person protest to the State House. And take us through what you went through.
Well, earlier in the year, there had been spate of killings. Yes. And as a matter of fact, it was the gruesome killings that we saw on the 3rd of January that prompted my tweeting about a red card to all of our political class for the cyclical pattern of poor governance that was resulting in the cheapening of the human life in Nigeria. And following that, many more deaths continued. And one of those times I put out a tweet and said, someday I would embark on a solo march in order to state clearly that I certainly am not comfortable with this idea that many people now die and we all just move on, as though we have normalized this idea of death, people killing without any recourse, without any consequences. And so when I did that tweet, I was hoping that I would not need to, because the government would get a handle on it. But wasn't it shocking to wake up and then to hear about Plateau, and the fact that Plateau was happening without the rest of us knowing, because it appeared to have started many days before it really blew up. And so when I saw the sheer numbers and I saw the pictures of children and women, I said, there's no excuse for not doing what I already said I would do. And so I put out a tweet again and said, next day, I'm going to be embarking on my solo march to the villa. Of course, when I went off on my march, I got all the way to the first gate, which is called the Pilot Gate. I know the topography of the villa. So the first gate, known as the Pilot Gate, is the farthermost gate from the villa itself, because you've got to go to 2 more gates and the final gate of the villa in order to get to the villa. And my destination was exactly there, because I knew that once my name wasn't on the list, I wouldn't be allowed. I didn't even want to, the idea of being allowed. I just needed my message to be available to the president, that at least one citizen was saying, this is not on. You can't just allow this to continue. And in many ways, I also wanted citizens who were sitting at home, who are in some way complicit in normalizing what we've been saying, that you have a voice, use that voice to say to the government that this is not acceptable. And so they, they stood in my way. They grabbed my one of the young men grabbed my place, grabbed my banner and said I wasn't going to take my banner. First they said, you have no right to come here. I said, no, stop it. It's a democracy. Yes. I have a right to come as far as this place. Yes. And, you need to engage me to know what I have come here for. No, we're not listening to you. Just go back from where you've come. And then the next thing, grabbing my banner, seizing telephones. And I simply said, you are not getting away with this, because you're picking on the wrong person. Today, I will get my banner. You're not going to get it off my hands. The phones that you've taken, I'm going to get everything back. And finally, I will do what I came here to do. And so one of them appeared from somewhere who seemed to have, better command of the situation. And he engaged me. And then I made my statement and then told him that I needed to hang up my banner somewhere. I pointed to the place and he said, okay, I will lead you there. You put your banner. And, I did that. And I turned and left.
Many people have looked at it and said, what is Oby up to? He doesn't know the state of Nigeria. The Nigerian is not really interested in shaking the system.
Well, I don't know about Nigeria not being interested in shaking the system. This system is already shaken. The system is already shaken. Any group of people, maybe they are not seeing people out there, but the truth, they are not seeing people on the street. So a lot of the people, or most of our political class, feel very, very complacent. They feel that all is well with Nigeria. All is not well. It is important for us to own up to the fact that we are fragile at this moment. There's, the country is brittle. It's pretty brittle, and we have to be careful that we don't push this further. The resilience that we have shown so far, only God knows how far, how elastic it is. So I believe that those who sort of say you can't shake the system, they have another thing coming. They have another thing coming.
Well, I've also said that the era of the vibrant civil society is over, and that the civil society now has become so weak because they have now been absorbed by political parties, by this surge of corruption in the country, and that civil society has been abused by a lot of people who see it as a platform to get jobs rather than to actually do things for society.
Well, I think that people also need to recognize that as society has changed, as ICT, very ubiquitous technology has changed the topography of social relationships. What we've now seen is that, you can't even define civil society in the way we used to traditionally define it. So every individual, every citizen is an activist in their own right, to the extent that they choose to engage with the system. Yes. So the whole idea of social contract that exists between the citizen and the nation state to which they belong, it's completely changed.
Well, some people have said it's not becoming more amorphous because you don't even know, to use the expression of the writer, there's no there. Like where do you really hold on, where the social society, the civil society is, for you to even galvanize it.
Indeed. Yes. But then it's also, the upshot of that is that people can interact and create their own immediate collective, right? Yes. So different collectives can have different issues. It is not static. So you have a situation where at one point in time, you and I agree on a particular issue that we believe should be addressed. We can become civil society. It's the dynamism that, you know, technology brings to the whole social interaction that we should, you know, focus on. And I do believe that I do believe that we're actually better off now than in those days when just a few people made up civil society and could stay in a room and have meetings and issue press releases.
It became a cult.
Today,
yes,
you have seen that it's a wider gamut of interaction. Now, moving it from just talk to real action on the field is an entirely different thing.
That's where I was going.
Yes, so because, you know, I mean, the experience that we had, you know, is a very classic case of it. When we started off with the Bring Back Our Girls movement, it took tweets from me, and you know and then you know so many around the world began to tweet, and then the next thing there was the march of the 30th of April 2014. That march, many people came out for it because we had galvanized on social media and also print media and electronic media. The march was, I mean, it was sprawling with individuals, all kinds of people, you know, gender, male, female, but majority female. Then we had boys, we had girls, we had people of all kinds of persuasion, people of all kinds of political leaning, people of all kinds of ethnicity, language, you know. There was just simply one thing. We all came out on the basis of shared humanity with the girls who had been missing and for whom no credible action was being taken that was known to society, to the public. So when that crowd gathered on the 30th of April, so we got all the way to the National Assembly and we engaged with the principal officers, you know, to the credit of David Mark and his colleagues. They came out in the rain. We were all drenched together with them, having that engagement. And what we said to them was, what are you folks doing? I mean, it's almost more than 2 weeks since girls were abducted in their hundreds from their school. No word from the government. You are the National Assembly. You represent these children and their parents, you know, as their House of Reps or Senator. So what is it that is going on in the country? This is abnormal. And so we're here to say to you that we want to see immediate action of rescue for Chibok girls. And we engaged, and then we gave them letters and demands that we were making on the issue of abduction of women, and especially children, boys or girls, you know, just do something. Have a better hold on this. It was degenerating. And they promised us that they would go to the president and then they would have a response for us. And we went back we marched back to the Unity Fountain. And when we got to the Unity Fountain, everyone was looking at me as the, you know, I was what do you call it? I was leader of the march, you know, default leader of the march, you know, on that day. And, you know, so they were looking to me to give directions as to what was next. So I said to them, we have two options. Option one is to say, we have handed over the problem. We've been heard loud and clear by the National Assembly. They will now liaise with the executive and figure out what to do, and then we would get feedback and we would disseminate, publicize the feedback. Or option two would be that we would keep coming out until real action is taken concerning the girls, because the fact that they promised doesn't mean that the action will be taken. And we needed to keep up the pressure for that action to be taken for the girls. So if you wanted results, you needed to do much more than just come out for one day and that would be it. And when I said that to the crowd, they said option two. And I wasn't quite clear as to whether they understood what the implication of option two was. Option 2 meant you would come out. I mean, we were coming out. The day that we came out, that April 30th, I was billed to be in one of the countries where I advised, you know, the president and their cabinet.
Yes.
But here I was, I had to, you know, reschedule that
yes.
because this was so important. Now, if they were saying, yes, they agreed we needed to be coming out, I was saying to myself, oh my God, what are you getting into? That means you're going to have to come out yourself, you know? And they said option 2. So I explained the implications a little further. I said, you know, it's easy for all of you to scream now because it's like a mob, you know, the mob psychology. You're screaming and saying, we will all come out.
Yes.
When the rubber meets the road, it might be difficult for you people to come out. So if you know that that this is going to be tough for you, please be amongst the people that choose option 1. So I'm going to go through these 2 options all over again. And I did. And they were not, you know, there were not even any voices that spoke up for option 1. So it was option 2. And so that began our everyday sit out.
Yes.
So we began to come out every day after the 30th of April. By the way, it wasn't until about the 5th, regardless of the fact that we came out every day, it wasn't until about the 5th that the then president then did a presidential chat, which we all looked forward to because we thought, finally, we're going to hear something very tangible about what government had been doing that we may not have been aware of. But when the president granted that interview, then we knew we were in trouble. And that the girls were in serious trouble. You know, and that just killed the spirit of everyone. But in a way, it birthed a strong sense of a movement.
Yeah.
By the way, on that April 30th, because sometimes people say to me, why is it that your commitment to this is so strong? What is in this thing that makes you so totally committed to it? And I say to them, certain things may appear very little to other people, but they are big to me. On that day, a gentleman that I didn't know was the chair of the Chibok community in Abuja, went on his knees in the rain and said to me, Ma, please promise me, promise us, promise my people that you will not stop asking for these girls until they bring our daughters back. And right there in the rain, I promised Sam. I said to him, we're in this together. We will stand for these girls until they all come back. Oh my God. You know, it depends on what background you're from. I came from the background, or rather I come from the background where my dad said to me, never open your mouth to promise what you don't plan to do.
Exactly.
Integrity is not complete until it is consistent.
Exactly. So, we have moved a long way from that time. Some of the girls are back. And so on. What is your sense of the Chibok episode? Because we also have the Dapchi.
Yes. So the Chibok episode is a shame to this administration in every sense of the word. I have, and together with the movement, we have appreciated the effort that led to the return of 107 of the girls. Yes. However, it took so much fight for this to happen. The government at many times just behaved even worse than the government under which this government under which the girls were abducted by being so resistant to citizens' advocacy demanding for action for the girls.
How so?
Oh my God, do you mean how many times did the Minister of Information insult our movement? How many times did they? Yes, they hired internet trolls to attack our movement. They tried all kinds of tarnishing of our reputation. It didn't work. I mean, they were just reading from the script of the previous administration that failed. I mean, I thought that was that was actually very low. That was low, and so our advocacy was basically what do you call it, administration neutral. We had indicated that no matter who the president is. The issue is that the Constitution imposes the duty on the president. Under our centralized federalism, he has command and control of the military and security assets of the country. And so he is the one ultimately responsible for implementing I think it's Section 14(2)(b) of the Federal Constitution 1999, which says that the primary duty and responsibility of government is security and welfare of the people. So we were right to hold the president accountable for the rescue of Chibok girls, regardless of who the president is, regardless of where he came from, regardless of what party put him in office. So we continued with our agitation. And somehow, I don't know what it was that was playing in the minds of this administration. They sort of thought we should have stopped agitating. Stopped agitating? Excuse me, where are the girls? And by the way, you as a party, when you were campaigning and in opposition, you made quite a show of saying if you people had been the ones in office, these girls would have been rescued immediately. They were failing the girls. They were being draconian and repressing the voice of citizens, ostensibly speaking on the behalf of speaking up for our agitation. And in many ways, the kind of attitude that they put up seemed to appear to project that they cared about
the opposition.
In opposition. So when Chibok girls happened and the previous government could not do anything before it left office, and you had made such a big do of what you were going to do, and then when you got into office, you repeated everything. The government, in fact, the only thing that I would say for them was that by the time we sent a couple of letters to President Buhari saying we wanted to have a meeting to know what this new government was going to do differently to get Chibok girls back, and that we were going to be coming with some of the parents. Finally, they sent us a letter inviting us to the first meeting, which happened, I think, on July 8, 2015. And that meeting was very good in the sense that the president repeated all he said in his inauguration. In his inauguration, he had said, we would not consider ourselves to have defeated Boko Haram without the rescue of Chibok girls. So, I mean, how more can a person sound persuasive about what they would do if the person was, of course, very deliberate and intentional and would live up to that pledge? You know what? It was unfortunate. Everything that the government agreed to do, including the most important, set up a system of frequent feedback to the parents. Yes. If you didn't even give us as a movement feedback, at least let the parents know what you were. They didn't set it up. We sent reminders. We also, one of the things, another thing that the president agreed to do was to rehabilitate the parents, because we already lost about 17 of them. Heartbroken. They died of all kinds of, the parents, 17 had died when we met with the president. And we said, before many more of them would die out of heartbreak, it would be good for the government because their lives had been destabilized completely. Some of them were fleeing all the way, refugees now in different towns and cities. So we said, find all of them, keep them, take care of them, give them hope to hold on for their children. None of that was done. We watched that whole thing, and what stood out for us was that the president not only had a demeanor that was not welcoming of the question on Chibok girls, but the substance of his response. He said, I have no credible intelligence on the whereabouts of those girls. Gosh. Oh my God, that killed a number of the parents their spirit.
That takes away everything from the confidence.
Oh my God, it shattered. It shattered them. He lost us with that interview. Then we wrote and said, we want to have another meeting because this is now almost 6 months since after we met you. So we need to know what exactly is going on. And, you know, they weren't forthcoming. But 24 hours to the date that we said we would have our march to the villa, then one of his spokespersons engaged with the movement and said the president was ready to receive us at 11 a.m. that 14th of January. And we were going to go, and we said to the Chibok girls' parents that they can do something in Chibok to show that they are also following this closely, but because we are not able to support their movement to join us. I mean, everything about BBOG has been self-funded. We took a resolution not to take a dime from anybody. We are the citizens that care. So we're going to put our little money where our empathy lies. And on that day, 108 Chibok parents joined us in that march to the villa, the largest number we had ever seen since the advocacy. And that meeting was the worst meeting a president could ever have with grieving parents, grieving citizens of his country. It was, I left that meeting completely disappointed. Oh, President Buhari at that meeting showed he showed the kind of behavior that leaders must never show. I mean, no way, no way. Crying parents, and President Buhari spent more time talking about himself than engaging the parents. I'd never seen such level of self-absorption.
That sounds like Trump.
Well, you know, maybe both of them can have tea together. But as far as I was concerned on that day, the president lost me, totally. These women were you know, there's a kind of groan that you get into, and all you hear is that's what his parents were doing. But the president, because they hadn't wanted, you know, when we got there, when we got to the villa gate, they left us there in the sun. The parents had to sit on the floor, saying they were not going anywhere. And we said we weren't going anywhere at that villa gate because they said, you know, the president was busy. Then when they saw that we were determined, they then sent a bus to take us to the banquet hall. We got to the banquet hall. We were left waiting for quite a while. Suddenly, we saw a group of people coming. That was a team made up of the Minister of Defense, Minister of Women Affairs, and Chief of Army Staff, and I think Chief of Defense, and the NSA. So when they came, and then Garba Shehu, who then introduced them and said the president was unable to meet us, so he has sent a very strong delegation to meet with us. At which, you know, when I was given the microphone, I said, we had a meeting with the president July 8th, and we agreed that there would be a follow-up meeting. This is the follow-up meeting. It's the president that we have come to see. We don't in any way disrespect or disregard, you know, or the delegation of the president. But these parents and our movement would like to hear directly from the president on what he's doing about Chibok girls. And then the Chibok parents said the same thing, two of their representatives that spoke, as well as the chairman of the Chibok community. And so we said, I had said we were not leaving. Since the president has some meetings that he's running, we will wait. When he's through with his meetings, he would meet us, you know, waiting for him here. That didn't go well with them, you know, because I think they sensed that there was trouble. These people had occupied the State House banquet hall. And now saying we're not going until the meeting, you meet with us, and the president speaks to the issue, you know. So, and the parents said the same thing and were wailing. So I think the NSA went, worked some work that he did, and then, you know, before you knew it, they all spirited out a bit, and then some 45 minutes later, they came back in, and then a few minutes later we heard, you know, ladies and gentlemen, rise for the president. And when the president walked in, you know, you could see a very angry leader. You know, the worst thing that a leader can do is to be angry at the citizens. You know, because, yes, the truth be told, citizens are going to do all manner of things that should anger a leader. But the capacity to know that the privilege of leadership puts on you, imposes on you, this capacity to be of a largeness of heart. He didn't show any of it to parents who were mourning, who were grieving their children. And for me, nothing that the president does surprises me because of what I saw on that day.
Well, at least we got some people back, and there was a lot of celebration.
Oh, like I said, you know, we were very happy. We were very happy. Parents of the girls that came back were told not to in any way interact with our movement. They were warned.
Really?
Oh, yes. They were warned by the government. Don't you dare show that you're ungrateful to the government by interacting with this group that has not been nice to the government. Like, you know, I mean, for goodness sake, we're not sycophants of government. We were standing out there for those girls.
Yes,
as far as we're concerned, girls are back, full stop. You know, we didn't care to be acknowledged by anybody, but the families of these girls still found ways to send messages to say, thank you so much. Because if you did not continue asking for our girls, maybe in the typical Nigeria kind of way where people quickly move on and issue becomes history. That's how our children would have been history. We really were so excited because it validated our advocacy. Because there were many people who took umbrage at the advocacy. I still cannot for the life of me understand how it was that 219 girls were taken away from their school in our country, in the same Nigeria that I thought I knew. And it didn't bring all of us together to say, this is an abomination, this must not happen. Instead, it began to divide us with the people who said Chibok girls was a scam, and the ones who said, oh, this is just, you know, to embarrass the then government. And I'm thinking to myself, of all things I could do with my life, it is to be part of something that is designed to, I mean, you know, for me, something was broken. Something was broken in our society. There's something that this hideous politics that has not even delivered good governance has done to our society. It has broken the fabric that of common cause, shared values. You know, that sense of shared humanity, community. It's broken, and it requires fixing. And I believe that it got broken because leaders encouraged it.
Now, we have 2019 coming, and there's always a sense that maybe we'll get something. Do you have any optimism?
I don't know for whatever reason, but one of the days I was really in despair about the state of our nation, and I was thinking that how come we're just trapped? We're trapped in this low equilibrium leadership where, regardless of what party, it just turns up, you know, this poor quality, you know, bad leadership, bad governance, and therefore governance failure in every sense of the word. So as I was going through this lamentation process, and then I heard, you know, when was the first election that led to independence? I said 1959, and said, when was the next other election that happened? I said 1979. He said, how many years? I said 20 years. So he said, well, you know, your country seems to travel on a 20-year, you know, cycle where you have a very momentous, you know, election, and then somehow you make the mistake of squandering it following after. So he said 1959 to 1979, 20 years of militarization, war and everything, but 79 you got it, into democracy. Then that democracy became short-lived, and then you traveled the wilderness again. And then the next other time you got election, 1999, 20 years. So he said, how many years would it be by 2019? I said, 20 years. He said, so a historical election would happen in your country. You're going to get something that's momentous. The issue is going to be, are you going to hold it and enable it to deliver good governance? So in a way, Sam, I don't know, maybe it's that spiritual side of me sort of saying that 2019 is going to deliver a surprise to us.
Is it the year of the red card then?
I think that it is the year when citizens are taking their place in democracy. That was always the missing link. You know, our citizens always felt that they were the lowest part of the chain. Okay, so it appeared as if citizens sort of looked at themselves as people who would react to what the political class had decided.
But the nines, actually 1959, 79, 99, they have never really delivered any change. So maybe we are picking the wrong dates for great change. Because 99 gave us independence, led to the Civil War. 79 came with all kinds of political...
but they were not inevitable. That's the point, Sam. Those things that followed the momentous elections
were not inevitable.
So they could have been averted.
So the stars, how did Shakespeare put it? The problem is not in our stars, but it's in us.
Yeah,
so it's not in 79 or 2009 or 2019. Yes. Are we ready? As we stand now today, some people say as we stand now today, the political society, let me not just say political class, the Gramscian political society is not even ready to come together with a voice and with ideological clarity to say, this is what we want, in such a way as to galvanize the office of the citizen that you talked about, to galvanize the people to say, this is the agenda, this is how we're going to take it, and we're not going to take no for an answer.
Oh, but come on, Sam. You're expecting the people who have benefited from the lack of presence of mind of the citizens to be the ones that say to the citizens, this is how you skin us. They are not going to do that. They have no incentive. That word incentive speaks to everything that the human being does. Their incentive is to leave the politics that we have the way it is, because it guarantees them a political environment that's not accountable in any sense of the word to citizens. A political context is not accountable to citizens. What would happen is that people can carry on with bad behavior, and the bad behavior would have no consequences. You have seen that when we talk about bad governance, the key manifestation of bad governance is systemic corruption.
Yes.
Who are the beneficiaries of systemic corruption?
They are the people.
They are the people. So grand corruption is done grandly by this political class, and so they wouldn't want to change it. So what needs to happen is a disruption. The disruption is only possible if you could mobilize the people who are the ones who, by their voting process, confer legitimacy to this political class.
So are you going to play a role in that?
So we are going to, our Red Card movement, we're going to have what we call Summit of the Alternatives. We're going to, so citizens are going to come from across the Federation and be in one place, and then we're going to have all of these ones that say they are the alternatives. They are the new kids on the block. They are the ones who are sort of seeing the vision of a different Nigeria from the one that the APC and PDP, that we call the Siamese twins of bad governance, have, So if these other parties and these other groups and personalities are saying, we are not anything like APC and PDP, well, before you get to election, we want to show you that we as citizens want you not to be like that. And if you do prove by virtue of the things that you agree to do, for example, every of your candidate must pass the test of character, competence, and capacity. Without these three, inextricably linked and in one person that is seeking to be a member of the House or a senator, a governor or president or a member of the House of Assembly, we, the citizens, will consider you to be one and the same as the Siamese twins. Okay? So that's one. The second one is the content of governance. So we're looking at what we call a new social contract, and we call it the governance vision. So the governance vision is to look at what is it? What's the kind of economic governance that would deliver Nigeria from, shackling poverty? What is it that would take us away from the very strangulating deep holes of the oil wells, where we seem to be totally trapped and not able to get ourselves out into structural change that would lead to productivity and competitiveness of the Nigerian society in order to build a prosperous society where everyone has a stake because they are allowed to be the best that they can be, and they can lift themselves out of poverty, and then we can create a stable society. So governance vision. Then the third part of it is, of course, that we are going to be looking to them to say, you can take down these Goliaths. You can take down these Goliaths by creating alliances. In other words, it's instead of the coalition of the evil, you get the axis of the good, right? So the ones who can come together and sort of become formidable bloc that can say to the Goliaths of bad governance, we're ready for you. So it is now time for the office of the citizen to take its rightful place, and that for me is a mission that must be accomplished.
Thank you very much. We have had Oby Ezekwesili, who I describe as the First Lady of Nigerian Conscience. You're welcome, and thank you for being on this show.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that is all on the program this week. You can get more updates on my website, www.samomasheye.com. Also follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @SamOmasheye. Thank you for watching, and until next time, be good.